Imagine standing in your parents' living room, heart pounding, as they smile and announce they're paying for your brother's dream wedding. Champagne, flowers, everything. Then, when you ask if they'll help with yours, they look you straight in the eye and say, "You're not worth it." That moment shattered me. But they had no idea those words would one day cost them everything they held dear. If you've ever been cast aside, made to feel invisible, or treated as less than in your own family, hit that like button and subscribe. Because this isn't just a story about betrayal, it's about the kind of revenge that makes every slight, every insult, burn with justice. I grew up in a house where silence spoke louder than words. My parents never said outright that my brother was their favorite. They didn't need to. It was in the way my mom's eyes sparkled when he walked into a room, the way my dad's laugh boomed when my brother cracked the simplest joke. With me, it was different. I was met with sighs, side glances, and the occasional, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" From the outside, we looked like a normal family. We had dinners together, celebrated birthdays, went on vacations. But behind that polished surface, there was always an invisible scale. On one side was my brother, Thomas, golden child, high achiever, football captain. On the other side was me, the afterthought. No matter what I did, the scale never tipped in my favor. I remember once bringing home a painting I'd spent weeks on for art class. I was so proud. I held it up, waiting for even a flicker of approval. My mom barely glanced at it before asking if I'd set the table. That same week, my brother came home with a second-place ribbon from track. They framed it. You learn, over time, to swallow your disappointments, to smile when your heart aches, to tell yourself it doesn't matter, even when it does. But no amount of self-talk prepares you for the moment your parents look you in the eye and tell you, point blank, that you are not worth investing in. It happened the summer Thomas got engaged. He'd been dating Melissa for 2 years, and to be fair, she was lovely. Kind, intelligent, always polite to me even when my parents pretended I wasn't there. When Thomas announced the proposal, the house turned into a planning committee overnight. My mom clipped bridal magazines, my dad researched venues. Suddenly, every dinner conversation revolved around flowers, catering, and tuxedo fittings. I listened quietly, a smile plastered on my face, while inside something twisted tighter with every passing day. Then came the night that changed everything. We were all sitting in the living room, Melissa perched on the couch next to Thomas, glowing. My parents were practically buzzing with excitement. That's when my dad cleared his throat and said, "Melissa, we want you to know, the wedding expenses?
Don't worry about them.
We'll cover it all." Melissa's eyes widened, gratitude flooding her face. Thomas looked proud, smug even, like it was expected. Everyone clapped, laughed, celebrated. And me? I froze, and my own engagement was just a few months earlier. My fiancé, Daniel, and I had been scraping by, working extra shifts, cutting corners. We talked about asking my parents for even a small contribution. But after years of feeling second best, I hesitated. Still, hearing them promise a full wedding to Thomas and Melissa cracked something inside me. I couldn't hold it in. My voice, shaky but determined, cut through the laughter. "Did you ever think about helping Daniel and me with our wedding?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward me. My mom's smile faded, as if I'd ruined the mood. My dad leaned back in his chair, expression cold. He said it so casually, as if it were a fact carved into stone. "You're not worth it." Those 3 words sliced through me. The air seemed to leave the room. Daniel, who was sitting beside me, stiffened in shock. My mom didn't defend me. Thomas smirked, as if he'd been waiting for this. I wanted to scream, to demand how they could say something so cruel. But the words lodged in my throat. Instead, I just nodded, pretending it didn't matter, even as my chest burned. Later that night, lying awake beside Daniel, I replayed it again and again. Not worth it. The phrase became a drumbeat in my head. At first, it hollowed me out, confirming every suspicion I'd carried my whole life, that I was invisible, unlovable, disposable. But slowly, as the days passed, the sting began to harden into something else. Resolve. If I wasn't worth their love, their money, or their approval, fine. But one day, they would choke on those words. They thought I was the forgotten one, the weaker one. They couldn't see the storm they had just unleashed. Because what they didn't know was that betrayal like this doesn't just break you. It shapes you. And in my case, it was shaping the most unforgettable revenge they'd ever see. After that night, the house didn't feel like a home anymore. Every time I looked at my parents, I didn't just see mom and dad. I saw the people who had decided I wasn't worth investing in. I carried those words with me everywhere. At work, I'd zone out mid-task, hearing them echo in my head. With Daniel, I tried to put on a brave face, but the weight of their rejection pressed down like an anchor. Daniel tried to comfort me. One night, he wrapped his arms around me and whispered, "You're worth everything to me. Don't let them convince you otherwise." I wanted to believe him, I really did. But when the people who raised you look you in the eye and say you're not worth it, the wound goes deeper than love can reach. Meanwhile, the wedding circus marched on. Every weekend, I watched my parents and Thomas dive deeper into planning. They booked a 5-star hotel ballroom, hired a designer for custom invitations, and even splurged on a horse-drawn carriage for Melissa's grand entrance. A carriage. For a wedding. Each decision was a dagger. Every dollar spent on Thomas's big day felt like proof that I didn't matter. My own wedding had been a modest backyard affair, paid for entirely by me and Daniel. We'd borrowed chairs from friends, strung dollar store fairy lights, and begged a cousin to DJ for cheap. I had told myself it was enough because what mattered was the love we shared. But now, sitting at that same table where my parents pored over floral arrangements for Thomas, I felt cheated. What made it worse was Thomas himself. He reveled in it. He'd call me, pretending to update me on the wedding plans, but really, it was to rub it in. "Did you hear, sis? Dad booked the top photographer in the city. 20 grand for the package. Melissa's gonna look like a queen. Or, you should see mom with the caterer. I swear, she's more excited about this wedding than Melissa is." His voice dripped with smugness, and every word stoked the fire inside me. Melissa, on the other hand, seemed oblivious. She treated me kindly whenever we crossed paths. Sometimes I caught her giving me a sympathetic look, as if she knew something wasn't right. But she never said anything. Maybe she didn't want to rock the boat. Then came the rehearsal dinner. It was held at a fancy restaurant, the kind where the menu doesn't list prices and waiters hover like shadows at your elbow. Daniel and I sat quietly at the end of the table, outsiders in our own family gathering. My parents glowed with pride, clinking glasses, laughing louder than I'd ever heard them. At one point, my dad stood to make a toast. He raised his glass high, his voice thick with emotion. "To Thomas and Melissa, may your marriage be filled with love, laughter, and every happiness. You deserve nothing but the best." The table erupted in applause. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table, sensing the storm brewing inside me. I forced a smile, but my insides twisted. You deserve nothing but the best. And what did I deserve? A backyard wedding on a shoestring budget because my parents had decided I wasn't worth more. I excused myself to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. I stared at my reflection, trembling with rage. My parents' laughter echoed faintly through the walls, and in that moment, I realized something. I had spent my whole life waiting for them to love me the way they loved Thomas. Waiting for their approval. Waiting for fairness. But waiting had only left me broken. That night, staring at myself in that mirror, I made a decision. If they couldn't see my worth, I'd stop begging for it. Instead, I'd make them see. Not through words, not through tears, but through actions. They thought I was invisible. They thought I was weak. They thought I was disposable. But I was about to prove them wrong. For the first time in years, I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was the kind of calm that comes when pain hardens into resolve. I didn't know how yet, but I knew this. Their favoritism, their cruelty, their smug little golden boy, all of it would backfire. And when it did, they would regret ever saying I wasn't worth it. After the rehearsal dinner, I didn't just feel angry anymore. I felt alive. For the first time in my life, I had a purpose that wasn't about pleasing them or begging for scraps of affection. It was about justice, my justice. But here's the thing about revenge. It can't be rushed. Not if you want it to sting in the deepest way possible. My parents had humiliated me in front of the people I loved most, and Thomas had flaunted his favoritism like a trophy. If I was going to make them choke on their arrogance, I had to be patient. I had to plan. I started by observing. Quietly, carefully, I watched the chaos of their wedding preparations spiral bigger and bigger. Every vendor they hired, every bill they paid, every new extravagance they tacked on became ammunition for me. The total costs had skyrocketed well past $100,000. I knew because Thomas bragged about it daily. What none of them noticed was that I was keeping track. I had every invoice, every contract, every receipt that passed through my parents' hands, courtesy of a little digging when Mom left her email open one afternoon. They never suspected I was capable of paying attention, much less scheming. That was their mistake. Meanwhile, Daniel became my confidant. He was hesitant at first. Are you sure about this? It sounds dangerous. But he also knew what their rejection had done to me. He saw how deeply those words had carved into me, how every laugh at my expense added salt to the wound. Eventually, he stopped trying to dissuade me and started listening, really listening, as I mapped out how their blind favoritism was about to unravel. The opportunity came faster than I expected. One evening, Thomas called me, smug as ever. You won't believe this, sis. Dad put me on his business account. Said I should start learning the ropes, you know? Future heir, and all that. My blood boiled, but I kept my voice calm. That's great, Thomas. Really great. Inside, though, my mind was racing. My parents didn't just give him their money. They gave him access, responsibility. And Thomas? He was careless. Spoiled. Reckless with every privilege he'd ever been handed. That was the crack in the armor I'd been waiting for. A week later, I spotted my chance. Thomas was at our parents' house, bragging to Melissa about how he had the company card. He pulled it out of his wallet like it was a trophy, waving it around. And when he went to the bathroom, he left it sitting right there on the counter. I didn't take the card. I didn't need to. All I needed was the card number, the expiration date, and the security code. A quick photo with my phone, and it was mine. Now, let me be clear. I wasn't about to steal money. That would make me no better than them. No, my plan was more elegant, more precise. I was going to let Thomas sabotage himself, with just a little push from me. I set up a few online orders, small ones, nothing too crazy. Luxury items that Thomas might plausibly buy. A watch. A set of golf clubs. A ridiculously overpriced bottle of whiskey. Things that would raise eyebrows but not alarms. Then I waited. Sure enough, the charges started piling up. My dad noticed first. One evening, I overheard him grumbling to my mom, "What's Thomas doing with all these expenses? He's supposed to be responsible with the account." I smiled into my coffee mug. Over the next few weeks, I turned up the heat. A new suit here, concert tickets there. Always believable. Always just enough to make Thomas look like he was abusing the privilege. And the best part? He had no idea. Meanwhile, wedding preparations carried on. The closer we got to the big day, the more chaotic it became. My parents were stretched thin, both financially and emotionally. Arguments broke out over flower arrangements and guest lists. My mom lost sleep trying to keep everything perfect. And Thomas? He grew cockier, acting like a prince awaiting coronation. Melissa started to notice the cracks. I caught her once, pulling me aside. Is it just me, or is Thomas different lately? All this money, the wedding, it's changing him. I wanted to tell her everything right then, but I bit my tongue. Timing was everything, and the wedding would be the perfect stage for the truth to explode. Every betrayal, every slight, every time I was told I wasn't worth it, all of it was leading to this moment. And as the dates circled closer on the calendar, my plan sharpened. They thought I'd sit quietly in the shadows, forgotten and worthless. But when the lights went up and the vows were spoken, their golden boy was about to fall. And when he did, I'd be there, smiling in the front row. The morning of the wedding arrived like a storm you could smell in the air before the first drop fell. My parents were frantic, running around like generals preparing for war. Mom fussed over Melissa's dress, Dad barked at vendors, Thomas strutted about like a king awaiting his coronation. I watched it all quietly, the calmest person in the room. Because unlike them, I knew what was about to happen. You see, over the weeks, I'd been carefully feeding the cracks in Thomas's golden boy image. The charges on the business account had grown just enough to raise suspicion. My dad had already scolded him once, warning him not to take advantage of the privilege. Thomas, arrogant as ever, brushed it off. Relax, Dad. I've got it under control. But I knew the truth. Thomas was walking into this wedding with a noose already around his neck. All it would take was a tug to tighten it. The ceremony began beautifully. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, every corner dripping in flowers. Guests whispered about how lavish it all was. Melissa walked down the aisle looking radiant, and for a moment, even I felt a pang of guilt. She didn't deserve what was coming. But then I remembered, she was choosing Thomas. And choosing him meant choosing the very arrogance and cruelty that had crushed me. When the vows were exchanged, my parents beamed as though they were watching a fairy tale unfold. But beneath the perfect picture, chaos was brewing. Because while they were busy celebrating, I was busy moving. Earlier that morning, I had slipped a neatly organized folder into the hands of my father's business partner, Mr. Reynolds. The folder contained copies of every suspicious charge on the company account, highlighted in bold. Luxury watches, clubs, expensive dinners, all under Thomas's name. And on the very last page, a simple note in my handwriting. You trusted the wrong son. I didn't stay to see Mr. Reynolds open it. I knew he would. And I knew he would not keep it to himself. Sure enough, during the reception, the storm hit. The party was in full swing. Music, laughter, champagne flowing. I sat with Daniel, sipping quietly, waiting for the spark. Then I saw it. Mr. Reynolds approached my father, his face dark, his steps deliberate. He leaned in close, speaking low but firm. My dad's expression shifted from confusion to shock to fury in a matter of seconds. The room kept spinning with joy, but at our table, a silent implosion had begun. My father stormed over to Thomas, dragging him aside. Voices rose. My mother rushed to join them, panic etched across her face. Melissa, confused, tried to intervene. What's going on? And then it happened. My father's voice, loud enough for half the room to hear. Do you think I wouldn't find out, Thomas? Tens of thousands of dollars on MY company card? Watches, clubs, dinners? You embarrass me in front of my own partner. The music faltered. Guests turned. The whispers spread like wildfire. Thomas, red-faced and sputtering, tried to deny it. I didn't, it wasn't me. But my father held up the statements. Pages of them. It's right here. Don't you dare lie to me. Melissa's face crumbled. Thomas, is this true? He stammered, reaching for her hand, but she pulled away, eyes wide with betrayal. In that moment, the fairy tale shattered. The golden boy stood exposed, careless, greedy, unworthy. And I sat in the corner, sipping my champagne, finally savoring justice. My parents looked devastated. Their perfect son, the one they had poured everything into, had humiliated them in front of their entire community. The lavish wedding they had spent a fortune on was now overshadowed by scandal. But the best part? They had done it to themselves. I didn't need to scream, didn't need to beg for worth. All I had to do was shine a light on the truth they had been too blinded by favoritism to see. The reception fizzled after that. Melissa left in tears, her family dragging her out. My parents tried desperately to smooth things over with the guests, but the damage was done. Thomas sat alone, his face buried in his hands, the whispers circling him like vultures. Daniel leaned close to me and whispered, "You did it. You really did it." I didn't reply. I just smiled, not out of joy, but out of release. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one carrying the shame. And yet, a strange calm washed over me. Because I knew this wasn't the end. The fallout from this disaster was only just beginning. And when the dust settled, my parents would finally have to face the truth. They had gambled everything on their golden son and lost. Days after the wedding felt eerily quiet. No more frantic calls about floral arrangements. No more smug updates from Thomas. No more laughter echoing through my parents' house. It was as if the whole family had been plunged into silence, stunned by the wreckage of what should have been their proudest moment. Melissa moved out within a week. Word spread that she'd gone back to her parents' house, saying she couldn't marry a man who couldn't be trusted. I couldn't blame her. She deserved better than a liar who thought the world revolved around him. My parents, however, were not nearly as forgiving. They were furious, not just at Thomas, but at the humiliation he had brought to their doorstep. My father's business partner threatened to walk away if Thomas remained involved. Suddenly, their golden boy was a liability. For the first time in my life, I watched Thomas crumble under the weight of expectations. The same people who once sang his praises now turned their backs. He called me once, desperate. "Please, sis," he begged, his voice breaking. "You've got to help me explain to Dad. Tell him I didn't mean it, that it was a mistake." I almost laughed. This was the brother who had smirked when our parents told me I wasn't worth it. The one who flaunted every ounce of favoritism he'd ever been given. And now, when the tide turned, he came crawling to the sister who'd been invisible all her life. "Thomas," I said coldly, "Dad was right about one thing that night. Actions speak louder than words. And your actions told him everything he needed to know." Then I hung up. For once, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. As for my parents, they tried to salvage their reputation. They called me, too, but not to apologize. No, their tone was clipped, defensive. "You should have said something," my mother snapped one afternoon. "You should have warned us what Thomas was doing." I almost choked. Warn them? After everything? After being told, to my face, that I wasn't worth it? "No," I told her firmly. "I don't owe you warnings. You made it very clear where I stand in this family. Remember? Not worth it." There was silence on the line. For the first time, my mother had no comeback. That was the moment I realized the true power of revenge. It's not always about screaming in someone's face or slamming doors. Sometimes it's about stepping back and letting people choke on the consequences of their own choices. Over time, the balance shifted. My father's business began leaning on me for administrative help, not Thomas.
Why?
Because I'd quietly built a career in accounting, something they had dismissed as boring years ago. Now, that boring skill set made me valuable. Indispensable, even. At family gatherings, the whispers about Thomas never really stopped. "Such a shame," people would murmur. "He had everything, and he threw it away." Meanwhile, Daniel and I thrived. We worked hard, built our life together, and never once had to beg my parents for a dime. But the sweetest justice wasn't their downfall.
It was the shift in how they looked at me.
My parents no longer dismissed me as an afterthought. They no longer dared to call me worthless. They saw me now, really saw me, and though they would never admit it, I knew they regretted every cruel word. And yet, I didn't need their approval anymore. That was the ultimate freedom. Because revenge isn't just about making them pay. It's about reclaiming your power. That night, when I stood in front of the mirror after the rehearsal dinner, I promised myself they would regret underestimating me. And they did. Every single day after that wedding, they carried the weight of their favoritism like chains. So, when people ask me now if I ever forgave them, my answer is simple. I didn't need to. Their punishment was built into their choices. They wanted a golden son, a flawless fairy tale. What they got was scandal, disgrace, and a daughter who no longer cared to earn their love. And that, to me, is the sweetest kind of revenge.